I found a man living in my basement. He'd been there for weeks. I didn't know that when I went downstairs that night. The basement light was on. I had turned it off earlier. I remember pulling the string and watching the room go dark. Now it was on again. I stood at the top of the stairs and listened. I didn't call out. I just listened. The house behind me was quiet. There wasn't any television on, no water running, no movement upstairs. Just the low hum from the bulb downstairs. I started walking down slowly. The stairs creaked the way they always do, but that night they sounded louder. I couldn't tell if it was the house or just me listening too hard. Halfway down, I noticed the air felt different. The basement is usually cool and stale, but it was warmer than it should have been. When I reached the bottom, I stepped onto the concrete and looked around. The washing machine was against the left wall. The shelves along the back were stacked the way I always leave them. The furnace sat in the corner. The workbench beside it held the same tools. Everything looked the same. I moved a little farther into the basement and kept listening. That's when I heard it. A scrape. It was soft but clear, and it came from behind the furnace. There's a narrow space back there between the metal and the foundation wall. You don't think about it unless you're looking straight at it. I stopped moving. There was another small sound, closer to the edge of that gap, like someone shifting their weight. Then a shoe came into view. Slowly, it slid forward into the light. I saw his leg at first. Then, he stepped out fully, from behind the furnace. He was wearing a dark jacket and work boots. His hair was pressed flat on one side like he had been lying down. He didn't look surprised to see me. He just looked at me, steady and calm. I stepped back toward the stairs without taking my eyes off him. He moved at the same time and walked straight toward the staircase. He wasn't rushing. He didn't need to. He reached the bottom step before I did. I tried anyway. I moved quickly toward the stairs, but he caught my wrist as soon as my foot touched the first step. He pulled me backward hard enough that my shoulder hit the railing. I twisted and drove my elbow into his chest. He grunted but didn't let go. I stamped down on his foot and felt his grip loosen just enough for me to pull free. I made it up 2 steps before he grabbed the back of my shirt. He dragged me down again. My chin hit the wood and my teeth snapped together. He climbed over me and pressed me flat against the stairs. I couldn't move. I reached down and just started feeling around on the floor. My hand hit something solid. It was a hammer. I grabbed it and swung as hard as I could. It hit his head and he rolled off me. I got to my feet immediately. Blood was running down the side of his face. He touched it once, looked at his fingers, and then looked back at me. He stepped toward me again. We crashed into the shelves and boxes came down around us. Tools hit the floor. He forced me down and pressed his arm against my throat. I couldn't breathe. I shoved the hammer into his side and pushed as hard as I could. He moved just enough for me to break free. I crawled for the stairs again. He grabbed my ankle and pulled me down 2 steps. I kicked back and my heel hit his face. He let go. I ran up the stairs and slammed the basement door shut behind me. He hit it from the other side almost immediately. The door shook in its frame. I dragged a chair from the kitchen table and jammed it under the handle. Another hit made the frame crack near the hinges. I grabbed my phone and called emergency services. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to brace myself against the counter to keep from dropping it. I gave them my address and told them there was a man in my basement. The sirens started in the distance. Before they reached the house, the basement door burst open. He stood there, at the top of the stairs, blood running down his face. He just looked at me. The sirens got louder, and lights flashed through the front windows. He turned and walked toward the back of the house. I heard glass break. Then, everything went quiet. The police arrived within minutes. They searched the house and the yard. They found blood drops leading toward the alley, and then nothing. An officer went down into the basement with a flashlight and stayed there for several minutes. Eventually he called the others down. Behind the furnace, in that narrow space, they found a backpack. Inside were food wrappers, a water bottle, a small flashlight, and a folded blanket. There was also a notebook with dates and times. When I left for work, when I came home, when lights went on upstairs, when they went off. The entries went back weeks. The officers said he'd been getting in through the side basement door. The lock was damaged, like it had been forced. I never checked it, because I never used that door. I always kept it locked and left it alone. He didn't break in that night for the first time. He'd been inside many times. They took the backpack and the notebook with them. They photographed everything. They told me they would follow up. Then they left. After that, the house felt different. It wasn't louder or darker. It just didn't feel the same. After they left, I stood in the kitchen looking at the basement door for a long time. It had been patched and locked again. Eventually I opened it and looked down. The light was off. I went down slowly. The shelves were upright. The tools were back in place. The floor had been swept. The gap behind the furnace was empty. I tried to picture him in that space while I walked around upstairs, while I slept. That's when it really hit me. He'd been there all along. I'd been living in that house like everything was normal, going to work, making dinner, locking up at night, and he'd been right under me the whole time. I left the basement light on for the night. I wanted to be able to see it from the top of the stairs. I wanted to know if it went off again. The house stayed quiet. I lay in bed with my bedroom door open, staring down the hallway. The refrigerator came on at some point. The heating clicked on and off. I watched the clock until the hours blurred together. Sometime after midnight I woke up. The house was dark. The basement light was off. I knew I had left it on. I got out of bed and walked into the hallway. I stood at the top of the basement stairs and looked at the door. It was closed. I unlocked it slowly and opened it. The stairs were dark. I didn't turn the light on. I went down one step at a time. When I reached the bottom, I stood still for a few seconds before reaching for the string and turning the light back on. The basement looked the same at first. The shelves, the furnace, the workbench. Then I noticed something on the workbench that hadn't been there before. A small notebook. Not the one the police took. This one was thinner, plain, with the cover bent at the corners, like it had been carried around. I picked it up. There was only one page written in it. One line. I turned the light off. The ink was still fresh. I was still standing there with the notebook in my hand when I felt him behind me. He leaned in and whispered in my ear, "I never left.